Hello YouTubers, this is Music Sorger once again, and this time I'm gonna redo my James Bond series and continue with it. So for this movie, we're looking at movie number 11, Moonraker. Released June 29th, 1979, directed by Lewis Gilbert, who had done the previous movie The Spy Who Loved Me and even You Only Live Twice. And this was his last directing role for James Bond. It starred Roger Moore as Bond, obviously. Uh, Lois Chiles as Dr. Goodhead. Michael Lonsdale as Hugo Drax. Richard Kiel as Jaws. And Blanche Rivale as Jaws' girlfriend, and Corinne Cleary as Corinne Defoe. But before I get into this, there's a lot of stuff that happened in between the last movie, The Spy Who Loved Me, and this movie, and it's very evident because at the end of The Spy Who Loved Me, which the book was far better than the movie ever was, The Spy Who Loved Me, it ended with, "We'll return next time with For Your Eyes Only," which they changed, and there's a big reason it changed, is that in between the two movies, Star Wars came out, very much so, and it changed, I think, a lot of what the direction was going to be, what it was going to do. But anyway, also another thing about this movie, it's the first to gross $200 million in the James Bond series, which to me is absolutely wow. But now let's get into the story. Starts off with the Moonraker being stolen and everything, and it just goes from there. Hugo Drax. Now this is where the book and the movie very much differ, and in my opinion, I think like a lot of people's opinion, after you read the book, you might like the book a hell of a lot more than you like the movie. But anyway, another thing about this I thought is, maybe it's me, but around, this time or after it, I especially thought either this should be Roger Moore's last movie as Bond, or to go out on a high, or he's just gonna stay around too long and you'll feel bland and boring and have some really crappy roles, which, let's face it, after this movie, he did. And in my opinion, did maybe two of the worst Bond movies ever made after this. But anyway, the rocket's stolen, and the Moonraker rocket, which was attached to a plane or whatever, all of a sudden, bam, blows up, whatever. You get the scene. Another important thing about this is Shirley Bassey's third Bond song. She did, I'm trying to remember right now what she did. She did Goldfinger, Diamonds Are Forever, and Moonraker. And it's pretty good. And now, Hugo Drax. Hugo Drax is one of these characters that is very methodical, very smart, very intellectual. Bond has to overcome. That he's on pretty much the same level of smartness as James Bond, so it works out pretty good. But there's a lot of stuff in here. He's held up in California, and it goes all around the world. And his whole thing is he wants to put these, how do you make it? Natural killing stuff to kill all the humans on the Earth, but let the plants grow. And he uses the rocket going to outer space and creates their new species. So when they come back, I guess they can inhabit it. I'm not sure about that one. It's just one of these where it really is weird, because this movie is... This is what I'll say about Lewis Gilbert, and some might say this is a knock on him. I don't know if I'm the only one who's going to say this. Every movie Lewis Gilbert directed was absolutely boring. It had some boring ass movie. Like The Spy Who Loved Me. If anyone knows me, you want the cure for insomnia, put The Spy Who Loved Me on and you'll knock everybody out. It's just that boring. And even a lot of the stuff here, like the outer space scene. Okay, they bring back Jaws for this episode. I know I'm kind of rambling off into a whole million things. They bring Jaws back from The Spy Who Loved Me. Great character. And in this one, they give him a lot of depth. In that Jaws, he's introduced at the beginning in the beginning fight scene on the airplane. He's going down. He falls through the sky, falls into this big circuit tent, whatever, and gets up and all that. And he's like this badass villain that you just think, oh my god, how's Bond going to overcome this one? Which you always know that he does. And Jaws even, and then after a scene where they're hanging on this gondola, they're holding on to the wires and Jaws bites the wires or whatever, or they're on top and Bond gets down and Jaws crashes, comes out, and then finds out there's this girl there and Jaws falls in love with her and they both like each other. Now, there's just a lot of stuff in here that felt more... It's one of those movies that feels a lot more filler than actual movie, and it's kind of sad because the original plot to Moonraker was Hugo Drax was this Nazi who was one of these guys that the Germans made to sort of get behind enemy lines and start disrupting the enemy lines, but a bomb attack happened and couldn't remember who he was or anything, so I just assumed that any of Hugo Drax, who they kept calling him as because they thought, oh, he's an Englishman, he survived, okay. But yeah, the book is a lot better, and that's how it seems better. Hugo Drax in the book seems like a more vile character than in this movie. There's also this scene where one of Hugo Drax's bodyguards tries to kill Bond in a G-force machine, and it's quite a good scene. How do I put this? There's a lot of good scenes, but there's also a lot of bad scenes in this movie where it's just like, okay, that just feels a little out there. But the special effects, I think the special effects to me are what make this movie a lot better than what it is. The whole Star Wars comes out, and everything. Now, I know I didn't go into much detail about a lot of this as maybe I would normally in a Bond film, but just this Bond film, like, I didn't have much written down for it. I rewatched it again since I started doing this series and thought, oh my god, this movie, it's good. It's a good movie, but it drags in a lot of places and there's a lot of dialogue. Like Jaws has his part in it, and all these characters that are just really different. They're going off in these different directions, and Hugo Drax was a great villain. I will say he's a great villain. How he died was kind of like a lot of Bond villains. They build these villains up so much and they kill them, and it's just like, are you fucking kidding me? But this is actually going to be probably my last review like this. I'm probably going to change it up. I think 1980s Bond is going to be just one long-ass video. Because, I'll say it, out of 1980s, 2 of the worst James Bond films ever made came out of the 1980s. And coming up, John Glenn directing. If there's one thing I can say about the 1980s, after Octopussy, John Glenn should have been taken out. But also another thing about this is that it had a great premiere and all that, but you could tell Roger Moore just felt old in this movie. And it really, even over the next few years, you start seeing like, okay, why didn't they replace him? And that's a question I'll lay to you guys. Why didn't they replace him? Because I know over at least Octopussy and A View to a Kill, they had to convince him to come back. Because I think he was done, and he really didn't, I think, want to do it. But is what it is. It's not a terrible movie in any sense of the word. It's just, as I said, it's just very blah. Like, there's nothing really. It's not as good. Is it better than The Spy Who Loved Me? Yes. By much. Is it better than what's coming? Oh, fuck yeah. But anyway, yeah, that's my opinions on Moonraker. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment down below. This is Music Store, as I said once again. I'm probably going to do it in just one long ass video or break it into sections. I might do the final 3 Roger Moore films. I am still debating whether or not to do Never Say Never Again, which is not an Eon James Bond, which is weird because it's a Bond. It has James Bond. I call it Thunderball 2.0 because that's exactly what it is. But anyway, this is Music Sorter once again, my James Bond review. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. This is Music Sorter once again. Peace.